Just 8 days remain until the Scottish electorate makes their choice, and tonight we have representatives of 6 parties here in Pacific Quay to make their pitch to Scotland. Good evening, and welcome to the Model BBC's Scottish election debate. We invited all of the parties standing in Scotland to attend, although some chose not to. Those here are the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy62, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Demon4372, the leader of the Classical Liberal Party, Dunks11, the Green spokesperson for Education, Wassup008, the leader of the Scottish Unionist Party, MCR3257, and the deputy leader of Labour, Bobbybarf. I will now invite the panel to give an opening statement. First, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy62.
This election, you have an opportunity to change Scotland's destiny, an opportunity to properly serve our young people by transforming education, reforming curriculum for excellence from top to bottom, and ensuring that our students don't finish university drowning in masses of debt, an opportunity to properly fund the Scottish NHS and reward its staff for the incredible job they do, an opportunity to take Scotland on a different path, away from the divisive and nationalistic rhetoric of a second independence referendum. An opportunity to ensure that the people of Scotland's democratic will is heard. In this election, use your democratic voice to elect Scottish Conservative and Unionist MSPs to Holyrood to truly change Scotland's destiny.
Okay. Alright, thank you, Leachy. And now we'll move on to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Demon4372.
At this election, the Scottish people have a chance to reject the complacent and inactive parties in government and the official opposition at Westminster. They have a chance to elect representatives to the Scottish Parliament who have the interests of running Scotland in the best way possible, rather than inactive parties on both sides who have political power and not the interests of the people at heart. The Scottish Liberal Democrats have put education and federalisation at the heart of our campaign, because these are the issues that matter most to us. We believe in the essential principle that in order to create a fair and equal society, we must invest in our young people and give everyone the equal opportunity at the start of life. We also believe that power is best handled as close to the people as possible, and that is why we believe that further powers need to be devolved to the Scottish Parliament, as the decisions can better be taken by representatives at the Scottish level rather than Westminster. We will not stop there, however, and we will push for more powers to be devolved from the Scottish Parliament down to councils. A vote for the Liberal Democrats at this election is a vote to empower individuals and communities with representatives that will fight for them, actively and ferociously on the issues that matter, and will not get drawn into a bitter sectarian fight. At every corner we will fight for your rights and freedoms, and we will not back down from fighting attempts to harm individuals.
Okay, thank you, Demon. And now the leader of the Classical Liberal Party, Dunks11.
This election is a fundamental choice about the future of Scotland. This election will decide if we elect a government who are oblivious to the meaning of democracy and who wish to damage our economy and public services through continuing their obsession with independence. It will decide if we want to elect a government who are controlled by parties who are obsessed with the past at the expense of the future, or we offer a different alternative. You can vote for a party who will work for you, work for the people. You can vote for a party who will stand up for free markets and social tolerance. My message to you is, if you want a smaller and less intrusive government, then you should vote for the Classical Liberals.
Thank you, Dunks. And now the Green spokesperson for Education, Wassup008.
Scotland is great, but we can do so much better. A vote for the Greens will enable us to realise a vision for the common good. We are, of course, a party of the environment and protecting it not only for today but for our children and beyond. Having said this, we are not a single issue party. We are committed to bringing business to Scotland, all of Scotland. We will invest in high-speed internet to bring Scotland to the marketplace like never before. We will also seek to strengthen key industries and bring prosperity to all. Green politics is not about economic prosperity only, and not only about protecting our planet. We are about ensuring we can guarantee a prosperous and healthy future for our children. A vote for the Greens is a vote for common sense politics. A Green vote is a vote to take back your politics and to grow the shoots of grassroots politics. A Green vote is a vote to say no to the political harmony you will hear from the other parties here tonight and those that are also absent tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the leader of the Scottish Unionist Party, MCR 3257.
I'm here to offer you a choice. A choice between a group of mainstream parties who, whilst they have different means, whether that be economic irresponsibility, moral laxity, or Scottish nationalism, will all lead to the destruction of the United Kingdom and our proud history. Or you can vote for the Scottish Unionist Party, who will take back control of powers from the European Union, defend the United Kingdom, invest in public services, bring back jobs for all the many who have been unfairly treated by the establishment parties, and give Scotland a place on the world stage in terms of trade. I ask you to back your Scottish Unionist candidate to secure and achieve these aims.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, the Deputy Leader of Labour, Bobbybarf.
You've heard from all the other parties here today, but they all seem to be coming out with the same old, political lines about unionism and that. But Labour are the only party who offer a truly progressive unionist platform, one of giving people of Scotland a real choice on further devolution. We also want to reform all the public services that have been left to wither on the vine by the current government of Scotland. And we want to take it to the proper government and to show the people of the rest of the United Kingdom Labour can govern effectively and be the proper progressive unionist party for this Scotland.
Okay, and now on to our first question. What will your parties do to help Scotland's fisheries, and will you seek to exit the common fisheries policy? And we'll start with the leader of the Classical Liberal Party, Dunks 11.
Policies are built around helping everybody in Scotland achieve what they need to survive. And in terms of the common fisheries policies, and this links into our whole Brexit policy for the whole UK, we believe that we must maintain membership of the European Free Trade Association, and when we negotiate this, we will seek to ensure that British fisheries do not have to accept foreign fishermen coming in and taking all of our stocks. That's our policy.
Okay, and what is your policy on the fisheries, Conservative leader Leachy?
Well, the Scottish Conservatives are committed to taking back control of Scottish fisheries. At the moment, under the common fisheries policy of the European Union, around about 60% of Scottish fisheries aren't actually fished by Scottish fishermen. We believe that there is now a sea of opportunity that we can allow our fishermen to reclaim their livelihoods that have been destroyed under the common fisheries policy, and we will seek to look at developing a new policy in Westminster, or potentially even looking at devolving the issue to Holyrood.
Okay, the Green spokesperson, what's up 008?
Okay, so the common fisheries policy, we are seeking to bring politics to the grassroots, and we will speak to Scottish fishermen, and we will obviously leave the European Union, as that is the will of the people of the United Kingdom as a whole, and we seek to find out what the Scottish fishermen want, and we will work with them to develop a policy that is in their interest.
So do you have an actual policy on the fisheries?
No.
Okay, and now on to the leader of the Scottish Unionist Party, MCR 3257.
Well, we're very clear that we want to take back many powers from the European Union to the Scottish Parliament. One of them is fishing. Now, the common fisheries policy, which we would seek to leave, has been a disaster for Scottish fishermen. It's meant many of them losing their jobs. It's meant less money coming into Scotland, and the people who it's benefited are the people in Europe who don't have as much fish in their seas as we do. So leaving this agreement will mean that we can take back control of our waters, and that is exactly what we'll seek to do. So Scottish fishermen have been badly affected by this policy since June 1970. Then it's continued coming through. So in January we saw January 1983 we saw the total allowable catch imposing quotas on Scottish fishermen, and it carries on, and they kept taking more powers away from us, and meaning that we can do less. And by leaving the common fisheries policy, we will allow our fishermen to be able to reclaim their jobs, reclaim their livelihoods, and bring in more money to Scotland.
Okay, thank you very much. And the Deputy Leader of Labour, Bobbybarf?
The common fisheries policy has, to an extent, has devastated working class communities in Scotland and all over the country. If nothing else, Labour is a party of the working class, and so we will seek to withdraw from the European Union's common fishery policies, then look at all the regulations in place and make judgments on each of them about their benefit. And because this is very much a weighing up game, you have to weigh up the economic impact on these working class communities and the environmental impact. So we'll look at each of those regulations in turn and make a decision then.
Okay, thank you very much. And the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Demon 4372.
During this campaign, I've talked to a number of fishing communities about the issue of fishing policy. We would, unlike the other parties who are trying to make this a divisive debate about the European Union, we would first seek to renegotiate the common fisheries policy so that it works better for Scottish fishermen, and to ensure that sustainability is at the heart of any fisheries policies. We're not completely ruling out leaving. If leaving is the best thing that balances those two, then of course we will. The other thing that we have announced is a impact fund for Scottish fishing communities, to ensure that in these communities that have been hit hard by fishing policies in the past will be able to rebuild their economies and their societies.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll open up the floor if anyone has any more comments they wish to make on each of these statements.
Well, the Liberal Democrats have tried to make this not about the European Union. This absolutely is about the European Union because it's a policy they've imposed on us. We haven't agreed to it. And of course, the Earl himself is fervently in favour of the European Union. And it just shows how they really don't care about Scottish fishermen, because this would continue to be imposed. And they're only doing this now that we're leaving the European Union, because it wasn't their priority. It's not their priority that fishermen get their jobs back. Of course, it's not anybody's main priority, but their priority above that is membership of the European Union, which hurts fishermen. I'd say if you do work in this industry, if this affects you in any way, then you can't vote for a party who put the interests of the bankers and all those sort of European cronies above your livelihood.
That's a totally absurd point. The common fisheries policy would have been renegotiated in 2019 anyway. So in 2019, we would have been able to try and renegotiate the common fisheries policies so that it worked better for Scottish fishermen, which is a long-standing policy of the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats have never been non-critical of parts of the European Union. The European Union was never a perfect institution. We are the only party who is talking about rebuilding the communities that have been damaged by these by the previous policies, by doing our impact fund. The other parties are just talking about wanting to totally leave the common fisheries policy, and not actually talking about specifics that will help the communities that have been damaged.
I think I'd like to double down on what Mikey said about the Liberal Democrat policy about the common fisheries. I mean, they're talking about renegotiating it in 2019, but at the end of the day, the Scottish fishermen do not have the final say over the fisheries policy, which is meaning that good fish are being dumped off their boats because of the max fishing quotas. Surely leaving it would be a much more sensible policy, allow it to be decided in Westminster rather than in Brussels by people that we have no control over, and that is a sensible policy. So if you're a Scottish fisherman and you're really interested in this issue, then don't vote for a party that wants to bargain away in Brussels.
That's not true at all. You're totally lying. Firstly, I was talking about if we'd stayed in the European Union, it would have been renegotiated in 2019. We can renegotiate it now during Brexit, which is what during this week I've been talking to Scottish fishermen. and I was the one who brought it up in Parliament. No other party has brought it up. I talked about it at PMQs. The Liberal Democrats have had a long-standing policy of wanting to renegotiate the Common Fisheries Policy. Trying to make this about the European Union is just lying and trying to make this a divisive issue. There are lots of countries who don't think that parts of the European Union are perfect and something which needs to be renegotiated.
Regardless of our views on it, though, it has to be accepted, though, that large numbers of people in fish communities voted to leave based on the Common Fisheries Policy. Do you accept that?
Yeah, and we've said that we're not against leaving. We just first want to try and renegotiate, rather than having this totally unnuanced policy of saying we're just going to leave because and not even trying to renegotiate it. The first thing we're going to try and do is
a policy.
You can renegotiate the Common Fisheries Policy.
A policy that positively impacts many European countries and then massively negatively impacts us above any other country. It's going to be very difficult to negotiate. And let's remember, 2019 is a long way away.
No, it won't be renegotiated in 2019. That I was talking about.
But you still want to renegotiate.
And that's what you supported.
You still want to renegotiate, James.
That's what you wanted to happen.
Yeah, because that's the time that it comes up for renegotiation. Different policies come at different are renegotiated at different times. We want to renegotiate it now. If it won't benefit us by staying in, then we will absolutely leave. If we can't renegotiate it, then we'll leave. That's we've been clear about that.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. But we're gonna have to
move on. So you're delaying it more.
We're gonna have to move on now. On to our second question. Do you consider Scotland's current devolution status to be appropriate, and would you like to see an independent Scotland? And we will start with the Green spokesperson for education, WhatsApp008.
Okay, so on devolution and the Union, we believe as a party that we should be devolving as much as we can to the lowest common denominator within. So we are in favour of an inclusive democracy that puts the citizens at the heart of the democratic process. We would, in the event of another referendum, campaign for independence. We think that there should be more devolution from Westminster. We think that more powers should be devolved on a case-by-case basis. So things like social security, constitutional matters and immigration. We believe that in order to make Holyrood more powerful, and because at the moment it's the most powerful parliament in the world, doesn't have its own sovereign rights, sovereign parliament, sorry. So we need to devolve more and listen to the people of Scotland as to whether they want another referendum, and we would campaign for independence if that referendum was to move forward.
Okay, let's keep this orderly for now. We'll move on to the second panelist, the Liberal Democrats leader, Demon4372.
We've been absolutely clear about this. We don't think that...
No, you haven't.
Can we not interrupt each other?
We've been absolutely clear about this. We think that the issue of a second independence referendum shouldn't be a matter for the Scottish Parliament. If it is going to happen, it should come through the institutions which all parties have voted for at Westminster, which is the Direct Democracy Enhancement Act. If the people of Scotland want a second independence referendum, that is a matter for them, and that is something which has by Westminster been put to one side. We believe in a strong Scotland inside of federal UK, and we will fight constantly and ferociously for more powers to be devolved down to the Scottish Parliament, and then down from the Scottish Parliament to local councils and to the people, because we believe that decisions should be made at the lowest possible level.
Okay, thank you. And on to our next panellist, the leader of the Classical Liberal Party, Dunks11.
Well, we fundamentally believe in putting power where it matters, putting power to local people. However, we do not support the devolution of further powers to the Scottish Parliament, because that has only led to an increasing amount of centralisation. We support giving powers to local councils and regions to make their own decisions for the people in those areas, not giving it to the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh. because that is out of touch with the needs of people in Aberdeenshire, in Inverness, down in the borders. So we support giving power to people. And with regards to independence, well, we had a referendum in 2014. It was 55-45. I suggest it's time that the Scottish Greens and the SNP respect the result and get on with running Scotland.
Okay, on to our next panellist, the Deputy Leader of Labour, Bobbybarf.
The Labour Party is clear in its position that an independence referendum is unwanted and unnecessary, especially with the turbulence of Brexit coming ahead. However, we believe devolution is not just one-way street, and we support referendums on any further devolutions to the Scottish Parliament, as we believe we need to give the Scottish people real meaningful choice on the powers that the Scottish Parliament have, rather than it just being dictated to by Westminster.
Okay, next, the Leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy62.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I want to address the independence part of the question, and I believe that we in 2014 had our democratic mandate, had our democratic will, and the people spoke resoundingly that they did not want independence. There's no longer any. There's not the level of support required to have another independent referendum, and the Scottish Conservatives would strongly oppose any divisive attempts to return us to the divisions of 2014. With regards to the devolution part of the question, at the moment we would not look to devolve any issues, as we believe that all issues which need to be devolved have been devolved. However, if there was to be a particular issue which would look at devolution, then we'd probably look at a potential referendum, etc. on it, and a large debate on the specific issue. And second of all, we don't think that there needs to be any issues in particular which need to be devolved, as they are unlikely to be changed. For example, the tax powers being changed with increased in 10 and decreased by 10% aren't actually being used to be changed. So, for example, we fear that it could actually have no change on the lives of Scottish people.
Okay, and lastly, the Leader of the Scottish Unionist Party, MCR3257.
I'd like to pick up on Douglas's point about the referendum and make it very clear that more people voted against the divisive politics of independence in Scotland than voted for anything else in Scotland. So we're very clear that we're going to respect that result. We don't want another referendum because we think it would be very divisive and it would be morally wrong to put the country through that again. If a referendum does go ahead, we would campaign tooth and nail to keep Scotland within the Union. There are many benefits to it, which were outlined very clearly in the last referendum, which people voted to remain part of the United Kingdom in. In terms of devolution, where we would look at devolution is from Brussels to Holyrood. Currently, 75% of Holyrood Scottish Parliament business is taken up by sort of rubber stamping EU diktats. And so we would take back these powers so that we can focus on what actually affects Scottish people and what we need to do. We also support the Scottish Parliament. We don't want any transfer of any new power from Westminster to Holyrood, because we can have a situation where we have a de facto independence or independence by accident, which is what parties are trying to do. It's called gradualism. In fact, the Conservative Party only 2 years ago had a gradualist MP. He was deputy leader of the SNP, and he became an MP of the Conservative Party within a month. That he wanted more powers for the Scottish Parliament and was an unashamed Scottish nationalist. No party other than us, except maybe the classical Liberals, is strong on the Union. We have a proven record, and if you want to move on from the talking about independence and not governing properly, then the only party you can vote for is the Scottish Unionist Party.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll open up the floor to open debate in case anyone has any comments that they wish to make.
I'd like to come in on the point that MCR just made there. The Conservative and Unionist Party are absolutely committed to the Union, and the issue of one MP 2 years ago having those views is ridiculous. It's like one or two of your MPs having the views that they do on Islam, or having those views on gay people, or on traditional marriage. We don't base your party around those views, so why are you basing our party around these views, I've made it very clear, as has the rest of the Scottish Party, that we are diametrically opposed to any kind of second independence referendum, and to suggest otherwise is ridiculous.
Well, firstly, it was a year ago. He was made an MP 2 years ago when he defected, while still being a Scottish nationalist, straight from the SNP. I was in the party at the time. I was opposed to that. He was elected in the same internal referendum as me, not by the people, but by the members of the Conservative Party. He was made an MP only two months from his defection, straight from the SNP. You can't claim that that's a minor issue. The people of Central Scotland, which was his constituency, are still... I've spoken to people, they still can't trust you on the issue of unionism, because you made the SNP, well, de facto leader at one point, an MP within 2 months of his defection.
That is exactly like saying that 2 or 3 of your MPs having ridiculous views on Islam, for example, saying it's a cancer in Europe, is going to be I've had people come to me and tell me that they're not happy with the SUP and some of their MPs in Holyrood having issues with Islam, for example. And to raise that issue is just unfair, I think, because it's one individual MP.
No, but we were elected on a position of actually supporting sort of Christianity within the United
So you were elected
Kingdom,
on the mandate to be Islamophobic.
And that comes... It's not Islamophobic.
Cancer is
read
Islam.
The speech, you're taking it completely out of context. But you were elected on the mandate of being a unionist party. Your name has a unionist in it. And without a vote, without a general election, without the constituents choosing, you made an SNP defector who was still a Scottish nationalist, spoke about Scottish nationalism in Parliament. You made him an MP within 2 months of his defection, and he lasted as an MP for a year, more than a year.
I think it's quite telling that the Conservatives are trying to compare the NUP's long-standing Islamophobia and bigoted views to their stance on the union. It's a bit of a confusing comparison to make, given that the NUP is unquestionably an Islamophobic and bigoted party.
I don't think that... I think that the issue of that individual MP is, of course, our MPs are allowed to have their individual views, and as are every MP within each party. However, that was a single MP, and I wasn't around at the time in politics, and if it was up to me, I wouldn't have made that decision. However, the decision was made, and this Holyrood election is on the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party of today, and the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party of today is me and my team, and me and my team are completely committed to no independence referendum. All 15 of our candidates.
But you can't say that it's just one MP because he was elected by the Conservative Party.
You seem to disagree a lot with the policy of the National Liberal Democrat, with the National Conservative Party. Like, now you're disagreeing with them appointing an MP at one point. Before you were disagreeing with the policy on the NUP, because at one point you ruled out working with the NUP in Holyrood, and then, well, of course, then you turned.
That's absolutely false.
Because you realised that after ruling out working
false.
After ruling out working with us,
that's absolutely false.
Federalisation policy, you then realised that you needed someone to work with at Holyrood, because you ruled out everyone else. You've ruled out working with us. You'd ruled out working with them. And you were just billionaire mates sitting in the middle.
I think the problem is that the referendum that was held shows a proportion of Scots support more power, if not independence, for Scotland, and a lot of the parties are...
Well, you see, what we're doing right now is having a general election. This is where the people can vote for parties who want more power, and if that happens, then I believe that the Westminster Parliament would grant that power.
There is a clear mandate.
Divisive
there
referendum.
Is a clear
Shut
mandate
up, I'm talking.
Westminster federalisation. There's always been a clear mandate in Westminster
No, there's not.
federalisation.
There is not a clear mandate for nationwide federalisation, which is what you propose.
If
Your proposal for federalisation would take away £700 million. £700 million.
This is becoming a mess, and we're going to have to move on to our next question.
Can I just say something? Sorry. Just a quick comment. I was just going to say, the Conservatives' commitment to the Union can be made clear in the fact they only mention the Union as part of their name when they want to get votes off Scottish voters. You know.
Thank you.
You know.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Alright, now that we've closed that, let's move on to our third question. What changes will your parties make to Scotland's education system? And we will start with the leader of the Scottish Unionists, MCR 3257.
Well, we believe that every child deserves the best start in life, and I have no doubt that every other party believes that, so I'm not going to go with the sort of rhetoric as in our education system would be nice things, as I expect many other people will. What we actually want to do is we want to we fully support and encourage allowing free schools, faith schools, academic schools and grammar schools, which isn't currently the case due to reforms made by previous Westminster governments, because we want parents to have a choice in the education of their children. We want to empower parents because we think they know their children better than anyone else. Grammar schools, most importantly, because they're very important to provide a stepladder for academically able students from disadvantaged backgrounds. We'd also like to bring the Scottish grading system in line with English education, because many Scottish children are entering into the same job market as those in England. They'll be applying to English universities, seeking careers in England. There's no sense in having two different examination systems, which in many of these situations put Scottish children at a clear disadvantage, and in other situations is just pointless. So we'll make the grading system clearer, bring it in line with English education.
Okay, and now we'll move on to the next panellist, the leader of the Classical Liberal Party, Dunks 11.
Well, under previous administrations, we have seen Scotland's education system fall down the international rankings precisely because of the topic we just talked about, independence. Under the Classical Liberals, we propose, first of all, we will abolish the named person proposal, which is perhaps the most authoritarian proposal I have seen in a generation. It makes teachers into state spies and it takes away parental rights. It was deemed illegal by the Supreme Court, and yet parties still want to push on with it. At a higher level, we will seek to ensure that everybody in Scotland who wants to go to university will have the chance to do so. We will give students a £7,000 loan and a £2,000 grant, which would allow them to completely go to university regardless of financial background. And we will establish a new purpose-built university in Scotland, the first in 50 years in Perthshire. That is our proposals to ensure that education in Scotland becomes one of the world's best again.
Okay, and now on to the Deputy Leader of Labour, Bobbybarf.
The Labour Party is committed to giving the children of Scotland the ability to achieve their potential in full, and to achieve this, we're going to scrap the curriculum for excellence, and we're going to replace it with a curriculum for life, which will prepare all young people for life outside of school and college, and encompass things like first aid, sex education, relationship education, and political education, along with all the core subjects. Labour believe this will help the people of Scotland kind of achieve the country they want. And we're also committed to things like improving the number of apprenticeships available to Scottish youth and ensuring that employees just don't use it as a get around of, not paying people the minimum wage. We're going to also extend a free childcare guarantee from 15 to 25 hours for working parents of 3 and 4 year olds to ensure that, people can actually afford to live the lives they want to.
Okay, sorry. On to our next panellist, the Green spokesperson for education, WhatsApp008.
Okay, so you've heard a lot about changes in curriculums from the ground up and a lot of changes in terms of the total curriculum. We mainly, at the moment, are focusing on the getting a great start to education, because it starts with the early years education. So we pledge to seek to bring early years provision into the community and enable 30 hours of free nursery places per week for children from 2 years of age onwards. We will have a progressive attitude to learning where there's no fear of failure, and it's in the interest of the students. Schools will be free of advertising. I think that this is unhelpful and detrimental to education. We'll also be looking at mental health, very much so, and ensuring that this is not a barrier to learning. It is not a basis for discrimination, and that we deal with people being bullied. We also would like a Monday menu that will hopefully be meat free and open the opportunity for children to experience food beyond meat, because there is, let's face it, a lot of food that isn't meat that we can be giving our children. And also we
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap up.
Pretty much it on that one.
Okay. And on to the next person, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Stephen 4372.
The Liberal Democrats have put education at the forefront of our campaign in Scotland. We have a range of policies that we believe will improve the Scottish education system, including ensuring that pupil premium is funded properly. We will boost rural schools by creating a platform where we'll be able to share information about methods of teaching to help them grow and improve. We will reform the curriculum so that it's a truly modern curriculum, taking into account the needs and demands of the modern age. We will facilitate across the entire UK an effective, comprehensive system, and we will continue to ensure that Scottish universities can access above average research funding, because having sufficient research funding is one of the most important things in a modern education policy. And we will of course ensure that Scottish university stays free for everyone.
Okay. And lastly, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy62.
Thank you. So the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party believe that the Scottish youth have been completely underserved by Curriculum for Excellence. We've seen with recent PISA rankings that Scotland lacks behind their English counterparts. Scottish pupils lag behind their counterparts in all three sectors, from reading to maths to science, and we believe that there needs to be fundamental reforms from top to bottom from Curriculum for Excellence, and reform where it is failing. So for example, we need to ensure that the fundamentals are properly taught at the earliest age, such as reading and times tables, to sufficiently give them a platform for further education. We would like to implement the First Minister's Reading Challenge across Scottish schools, and we'd also want to allow the primary school teachers the freedom to teach, particularly when they have specialist subject knowledge, for example in a specific time in history such as the Vikings, or for example it's just modern issues such as recent elections, or even geographical issues such as a recent hurricane, perhaps it just swept through America. And at the higher education level, we'll commit to not implementing tuition fees for university courses in Scotland for Scottish students. We'll also advocate for the right for specialist and private schools to exist in Scotland. Alongside this, we will look at reforming the grading system for Scottish exams from National 5 through to Advanced Higher.
Okay, I'll now open up the floor to open debate, if anyone has any comments to make.
I'd like to go first. Well, we had the Greens talking about allowing vegetarianism and teaching about all that. They want to turn schools into a political tool to try to indoctrinate children into their ideology, rather than trying to teach them about vegetarianism and forcing them to eat non-meat options. How about we actually focus on maths, on English, on modern languages, on current affairs, the things which will actually matter, rather than trying to indoctrinate them into the green ideology.
We will be focusing on the core curriculum, and we will actually deliver the promises in our manifesto to widen the scope for children beyond meat, to remove advertising, and...
You're not justifying it, you're saying
yes.
That's in your manifesto.
Okay,
I asked you to justify it.
Meat
being in your manifesto is not a justification.
Unsustainable. Our education...
Do you not believe people should have personal choice?
Yes.
What about their personal choice? Their freedom?
Choice starts with education. You can't expect children to look beyond meat as an alternative if they don't know what the alternative is and haven't experienced it.
I think
There's
Schools are not the place to
it
indoctrinate
is not
children into your
indoctrination.
ideology.
It is
You'd
not
be
indoctrination.
outraged if the NUP
Yeah,
suggests using
okay.
schools.
I don't support. I've been long-standing opponent of meat-free Mondays, but I think it is going a little bit too far for Dunks to start talking about ideological indoctrination with the Greens
They
pushing.
want to teach children and try
Trying
to
to
encourage
compare
them to become
vegetarianism
vegetarians.
to an ideology is going a bit too far, don't you think?
sorry.
basically
I'm
becomes
never
an
going to support
ideology.
meat-free Mondays. I've been one of the longest opponents of it because I think it's just a stupid idea. But there are obviously benefits in improving vegetarian options in school meals and improving
There's a difference
the variety
between
of school
improving
meals.
it
And I think
and trying to
you
indoctrinate
trying
them
to turn
into
this
it.
into an overly rhetoric-filled debate is you're going overboard.
The Greens
a
want
bit.
to use class
You need
tags
to
saying
rein
this.
it back.
try to
Calm
teach
down,
them
Dunks.
about
Saying this, but
non-issues.
the thing is
Dunks,
that
take a
the
deep breath.
the Green spokesman just said choice starts with education. I think that's the most bigoted thing we will hear on this
well,
debate.
I think calling me a spokesman is bigoted, to be honest.
You're the education
Spokeswoman.
spokesman, are you?
So,
For goodness sake.
No, that's
Spokesman.
okay.
No, yes, this again. Look,
Uh,
indoctrination
Grow up.
is the fact that there's a political brainwashing scheme where people are forced to be moulded workers for business people they'll never meet, indoctrinating people to become loyal workers of the state. Honestly,
The Scottish education.
Hey, can I just ask on this advertising side? I'm not entirely sure what advertising there is in schools.
There
Like,
isn't
I'm just
any
not-
advertising in
I've-
schools.
I'm genuinely curious about what these.
but
yeah,
where there is, we
advertisements
seek
are.
to remove it.
But can you give an example?
Where?
Well,
I just
they don't
I don't
exist.
I just don't think so. I've never experienced advertisement in
Exactly,
schools.
because
I've
they
never
don't
seen
exist.
advertisement.
It's made up.
It's
Also-
it just
also, why-
seems like
why are you
a
making,
strange issue
Yeah, but-
to?
okay. So what about you? Me, I don't understand how you're saying that exploring options beyond me is indoctrination. How is it?
You're intending on
I'm
your
not
class
saying that. I'm not saying that.
Have
Dunks
you
is
ever?
being- Dunks
what-
is being an idiot. Dunks is being a irrational
Well,
idiot. and
Could you lay off the
shouting about
personal insults here?
extremism?
Also, why?
Like Dunks seems to trying to compare vegetarianism
It's-
to
it's-
Islamic terrorism or something.
No, I
It's
wasn't.
just going a bit too
They
far.
want to waste
Um,
class time to focus on vegetarianism when instead we
It's
could be
not
focusing
waste.
on maths,
It's not
English,
a waste.
modern languages,
It's not a
current
Why,
waste.
state.
why is it
Because
Mondays?
it's lunchtime. I don't.
Can WhatsApp answer the question
Why-
of what kind of advertising have you ever seen in schools? It is clearly a key policy if you want to raise it on a national debate. So could you please tell us what advertising you've ever seen in school if it's such a key policy of yours?
Okay, advertising in schools. Okay, so there are free products that places like restaurants give to children.
Like what?
I have never
There's
experienced
there's
this.
sponsorship.
Are you talking about like I've never I didn't even know sponsorship was a thing, but like
It isn't a thing.
you're always gonna get
Well,
some
well,
branded
okay.
drinks, for example, in schools, unless you're gonna give all children water or
Nationalise the
something.
school's food market.
So they can't drink branded
Yeah.
drinks in
It's-
school.
Everything has,
That's
to
still
come in,
advertising.
everything has to come in
It
grey
just
packaging.
doesn't seem like a problem.
It's still
Why
advertising.
are you expecting people to vote for you when your main point on key policy is
It's
an
an
issue that
it's
doesn't
a
exist?
policy. It's not the key
A policy you're raising on the national
our key
debate.
policy.
You've mentioned
Whoa.
two key policies.
Yeah,
One is
no, no, no.
vegetarianism on
But
Mondays,
you're
and one
completely
is removing
ignoring. You're
advertising,
completely
which doesn't
ignoring
exist.
the policy on mental health, on early years provision.
I think
because we all agree
I
on
think
that.
in-
we want
in
to
fairness-
pick
in
up an
fairness-
issue
in
that you
fairness-
have raised, which we don't agree
in
with.
fairness.
Okay.
In fairness, she did mention other issues. I think the fundamental problem was that the last issue that she raised was
Well, then it's a thing we all disagree
vegetarianism,
upon.
which is what obviously everyone's
We don't
going to
disagree that
remember.
it should be increased.
What you should have done is said vegetarianism in the middle,
Or just
somewhere
not
that we
said it
wouldn't
at
have
all.
noticed.
Also, why Mondays as well? Monday's not bad enough already.
Okay, guys, we're gonna have to move on now. It's. I'm sorry, Leachy. We don't have enough time. Okay, our next question is: will your parties seek to levy any additional taxes in Scotland? And we will start with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Demon4372.
What on our tax policy, we would move more taxes through federalisation to Scotland. If we believe that taxes should only be raised where there is an absolute need for it to do it. But I don't think at the moment that unless there is a need, if for example, to fund a public service or something, I think at the moment taxes should maybe come down once they're devolved, but it would ultimately have to look at the budget post federalisation.
Okay, and now the leader of the classical liberals, Dunks 11.
Absolutely not. We don't want to see any more taxes imposed on Scotland. The taxes are currently too high as it is. Scotland can do without being made poorer by an excessively taxed economy. What we want to do is to reduce taxes where possible, and if not, we will keep them the same as the rest of the UK. On a national level, we want to completely reform the tax system to turn it into a negative income tax, but that is out with the remit of the Scottish Parliament, and thus, at this time, we will seek to ensure that, if possible, we reduce the taxes, making everybody in Scotland richer, or keep them at least the same. Under no circumstances will we raise taxes a penny.
Okay, and now onto the Deputy Leader of Labour, Bobbybarf.
We have no current plans to institute any more taxes in Scotland. Simple as.
Okay, that's quite short. The Leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy62.
Well, we obviously don't want Scotland to be the most highly taxed part of the United Kingdom, at already incredibly high tax rates of 65%, in fact. And as a result, we certainly won't be raising any taxes, as we don't feel there's a need for it. And increasing taxes would simply just take more hard-earned money out of people's pockets. So our policy is that we will not increase taxes, and where possible, we will aim to decrease taxes in Scotland.
Okay, the Green spokesperson for education, Wassup008.
Okay, so we don't have any specific policies on raising or lowering taxes in Scotland, but we will be looking to devolve fiscal autonomy for Scotland, so it'll be up to Hollywood to decide, basically.
Okay, and lastly, the Leader of the Scottish Unionists, MCR3257.
Okay, firstly, I don't know if the Greens have any specific policies on anything. Also, we don't see any benefits to raising any taxes, so we have no plans to. We want people to be able to keep the money that they earn.
Okay, I'll open up the floor to debate.
Can I just ask around the panel, would any parties commit to not raising taxes in Scotland?
Well, I think it's unhelpful to say you're never ever going to raise taxes.
It's
Ultimately,
true.
You have no plans to?
No, because there are always circumstances where there is a possible unforeseable circumstance in which taxes could maybe be raised. But they're
already excessive.
The aim. No. As I said that before. The point is that I don't think it's a helpful thing to say that you're never ever going to raise taxes.
Yeah, we don't have any current plans either. I don't want to make some kind of. I don't want to have some kind of George Bush senior moment where I say, read my lips, no new taxes type thing.
Can everyone please confirm that they have no current plans?
Yeah, we have
to
no current
increase
plans to
taxes?
raise
current
taxes.
plans.
We have
The
no
classical
no
liberals
current
will not
plans.
increase taxes in the current parliament.
But there may be a
Labour?
situation where it may be necessary. Like, well,
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have leeway, but at the
They're
current
very
time, we would not raise
excessively
taxes.
high at the moment, and we have no.
Yes.
Which is the
Absolutely.
reason why devolving them to Scotland would benefit Scottish taxpayers, because it would mean that the decisions on what the tax level is will be at a lower level, which will mean that if Scottish taxpayers want a lower tax bill, then it will be easier for them to lobby
Well,
on
it
a
is just
Scottish level than it would be on a national level.
now. It is just now.
Okay, it seems like everything's summed up there, unless anyone has anything else they want to add. Okay, let's move on to our last question. With suicide rates higher in Scotland than the rest of the UK, how does the panel plan to address this specifically Scottish problem of poor mental health? And we will start with the Green spokesperson for education, Wassup008.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So our mental health policy is going to centre around proposing extra funded training for mental health professionals in the NHS, and centring it around children who may be suffering from mental illness. because we don't want we want to help the most vulnerable people who with a hidden illness, because it's not fair that mental health lacks the funding that it actually gets. That physical health gets. Is very important to us that we look after people's mental health, and we will plough money into it to ensure that people's mental health is looked after.
Okay, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Stephen 4372.
Mental health has long been a really important policy for the Liberal Democrats. We've introduced and helped with a number of reforms on the Westminster level for mental health. We would seek to reform mental health in Scotland, putting more money into it, reforming training, but ultimately there needs to be a shift in our way of thinking and dealing with mental health. We need to ensure that we make sure that young people have a better awareness about the indications of mental health and have better eating habits and healthy exercising, so that we can avoid people getting into the situation where they get depressed and have mental health issues in the first place.
Okay, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy 62.
Okay, the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party highly value the issue of mental health, and we're highly concerned about the high rate of suicide in Scotland, particularly in comparison to the rest of the United Kingdom. And so we take a two-pronged approach to this issue. First of all, through our NHS 1% rise policy, we would use some of those funds to increase funding for mental health part of the NHS, so that we can properly combat the issues of mental health, particularly before they get to the point of suicide, which is the key aspect of this question. And secondly, on the other side of healthcare, we have the education side of things, and we know that the LGBTQIA plus community are at a much higher rate of have a much higher rate of suicides than any other group, and as a result we want to introduce some reforms to Scottish schooling as to how we deal with those issues. For example, reform sex education to make it LGBTQIA plus inclusive, ensure that every teacher in Scotland is giving training in order to deal with discriminatory bullying based upon gender, sex, and it extends further than that, even into race and faith, for example, and sectarianism, etc. And we would ensure that the dedicated recording of LGBTQIA plus discrimination incidents on the CMIS system currently used by the Scottish secondary schools.
Okay, the leader of the Scottish Unionist Party, MCR 3257.
So it's an issue which I don't think many people are going to disagree on, and thankfully as well. But hitherto at the moment, mental health has been unfairly regarded as less important than physical health, because you can't see it. So what we'll do is ensure that more people are trained within the NHS to deal with mental health in a way which gives patients dignity and respect, as well as effective treatment. What's also important is that stigma is removed, so that those who are seeking to stabilise their life in the face of adversity are able to do so. One thing we'd also do with the NHS is we'd give an instruction that any patient displaying any indications of poor mental health on admission to hospital would have both their physical and mental health assessed, so that the issues which affect so many people can be properly targeted and addressed. Also, I'd just like to pick up on the Leach's point about the NHS funding. He said 1%, which would actually be, in real terms, a cut in the NHS budget.
Sorry, can I just clarify that really quickly? The 1% increase policy is that we will increase the Scottish NHS budget by 1% in real terms, or Barnett consequentials, whatever is higher. That's our policy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, right. We'd invest £2.5 billion in NHS Scotland. More of that funding will go to mental health. And we also recognise the LGBT element. So we'd increase funding in therapy programs related to gender dysphoria, so that people are able to make the right decision for them, rather than sort of making quick decisions and facing negative consequences. So we want to help anyone who bears the burden of any mental health issues, and I hope everyone agrees.
Okay, and now we will move on to the Deputy Leader of Labour, Bobbybarf.
Our policy on mental health is, again, kind of two-pronged as the Conservatives was in some respects. As mentioned before, we have our curriculum for life, which will include a reformation of sex education to include issues like mental health and LGBTQ plus, issues. And we'd also invest in the Scottish NHS to ensure there's 500 more GPs, so there's more help on the ground for people who need help within their community, and so we'd help remove the stigma around getting help which people need.
Okay, and now the Leader of the Classical Liberals, Dunks11.
Thank you. We want to put mental health on an equal footing with physical health. It is as important, and we will treat it as such. We will ensure that mental health treatment is as well funded in the NHS as physical treatment, and we will ensure that upon admission to hospital, anybody who looks like they might have some underlying mental health issues or who requests it can be screened and dealt with appropriately, because we want to ensure that everybody has the same security of mental health as we do with physical health.
Okay, and now I'll open up the floor very shortly for an open debate.
Yep. Just on you go, James.
You mentioned reforms to help LGBTQ youth. The NUP has a long history of homophobic comments made by senior members of their party.
No, it doesn't.
You have partially said that you would rule out working with them unless they apologised, and then you backtracked it and said that you would work with them, and then a very muddled policy. I know lots of queer youth, and I am a queer man myself. Will you rule out working with any SUP members who are homophobic or have said homophobic or, on a wider scale, Islamophobic comments?
Well, first of all, I think it's quite snide of you to take a question about suicide rates and LGBTQIA.
Because as a queer man myself, this is a very important issue to me, and a very important issue to many queer voters in Scotland. So I think it's something which is essential, because you cannot claim to want to help LGBTQ youth with mental health policies while also being in government in Scotland with politicians who want to actively harm the LGBT community.
Right, okay, well...
So first, can we
let Lee finish his response
true.
first, please?
If he were to give an example of that...
MCR can say.
Okay,
I don't have an issue. MCR.
Oh, well, that's completely not true. If I were to ask you to give an example of these comments, you wouldn't be able to find one. So
there
I'm
are
going
countless
to do that
examples within the press. I don't have them to hand, but I could very easily get them if I had enough time.
Well, there's none. I don't
have them on paper right now, but I can. I'll publish them in a statement later tonight. How about that?
Okay, and then I'll be able to properly counter it rather than something made up.
The question was to let you.
So yeah.
Okay, the question to me was based upon the answer that Mikey has just given, and he says that there has not been any explicit statements regarding homophobia. So unless you can actually mention these specific statements, how am I in a position when you cannot actually name? Can you let me finish? I won't let me finish. Could you actually name a statement that you want me to? You're asking me to base a complete coalition policy, which, by the way, we haven't seen the arithmetic of Holyrood on the 8th of July. On that, and I've spoken in fact to Mikey, and he's given me a completely reasonable assurance that there would be common sense policies in any sort of coalition deal. I haven't ruled out. What I've said is that it has to be based upon the fact that they wouldn't implement any of this legislation, and it wouldn't be the party line, and I think that's completely reasonable. And I think that if you can name a quote, and Mikey can, say that isn't the party line, then that's a completely reasonable position for the SUP to have.
So just to be clear, for all Scottish voters, and especially queer voters, to be absolutely clear, you are going to coalition with the Scottish Unionist Party.
I'm not committing to any coalition just now. I don't know
but
the arithmetic of the 8th of July.
But you're more than willing to work with them.
We will work
you
with
turning on your previous policy of saying that
ridiculous.
you
What
weren't
I said,
comfortable
in fact,
working.
no. The first thing I said in that statement was that we were concerned about some of the statements they have made, and we would need them to, for
Some of
example,
the things
apologise.
you said
Could you let
made
me
it absolutely clear that you
For
weren't willing
goodness
to work
sake,
with
if
them.
you're not going to let me speak, then I'm not going to answer your question.
I'm letting you speak. Go ahead.
The thing is, I said at the start of that press conference, I was asked this question that you've just asked me, and it was about the SUP. And what I said quite clearly was that I would work with I wouldn't work with the SUP unless they apologised for those statements, and I would want to make discussions with them before we entered into coalition. I have had a discussion with Mikey about those issues, and I can expressly state to queer voters that they won't be any worse off under a Scottish Conservative and SUP coalition. In fact, they'll be better off, as we've laid out in all of our plans with regards to that. In fact, you haven't laid out any plans about how you deal with LGBTQIA in that statement. We have, and we'll get the assurances from the SUP that I will receive the assurance from the SUP that they won't introduce anti-LGBTQIA plus legislation. We have LGBTQIA plus candidates running, in fact, in the senior leadership team of our party. We will, of course, look to prioritise LGBTQIA acceptance and oppose any form of discrimination in the policies we've laid out. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to look at a coalition and say with the SUP, look, are you going to... as long as you aren't going to implement any homophobic legislation, and in fact are going to increase the livelihoods of and better the lives of LGBTQIA individuals, then of course we would want to work with them. I mean, if MCR can give that confirmation that they won't introduce homophobic legislation and in fact will look to seek to some of these reforms, then I think that gives your answer, James.
Well, what we need to be looking at is not as them as LGBT youth, but them as people, and for all people within Scotland.
That's a very dismissive attitude to have, and ignores the fact that many of the issues about why there is a high suicide rate amongst amongst queer youth is because of their sexuality and their gender identity.
Okay,
and trying to dismiss it and say we're just going to treat them as individuals is a totally dismissive way of dealing with it.
I cannot respond to accusations where you've presented no evidence.
Yeah. There have been published countless times in the press.
I don't know what the accusation is. You're making things up. So if you
I'm not making things up.
If you present a statement, I will respond to it.
Press.
If you publish a statement, I will respond to it, and I hope Leachy will too.
I will.
Okay,
and I think
that now. I'm sorry, Leachy, but we're gonna have to move.
That's fine.
Okay. Now that the last question's over, I would ask each of the panel to give a closing statement, and I will go in the reverse order for the opening statement. So starting with the Labour leader, Bobbybarf.
Okay, today you've heard a lot of talk, you've heard a lot of policies, but again, the real crux of the issue is this is a bunch of parties offering a lot of platitudes with very little solid ideas. You know, I've put forward a progressive unionist agenda for Scotland, and that is what Labour represents in Scotland. And so if you want progressive, forward-facing, international-looking Scotland within a secure United Kingdom, vote Labour.
Okay, and now on to the Scottish Unionist Party leader, MCR 3257.
This election is the first Scottish Parliament election we've had in a while, and so it's going to be a defining election in what we want the Scottish Parliament to be about. And we are very clear about all our policies. We'll be publishing a well thought out manifesto tomorrow. We've published a party political broadcast today, and we will have various other literature. And we want to be clear that we will move on from the referendum results. We will make sure that that's delivered, both referendum results delivered properly. We will implement our plan for strong and capable government for Scotland, which works with Westminster, which prevents independence by accident, and unlike all the other parties, protects the values that Scotland and the United Kingdom particularly was built upon, and delivers for ordinary Scottish working people. Thank you.
Okay, and now onto the Green spokesperson for education, WhatsApp 0008.
Okay, so once again, we've heard the parties present here today arguing amongst each other, scoring points. But we, the Greens, come with an alternative. We can make Scotland a country for the many, not the few. A great country that does the best for our planet and people. Scotland is our country, a country to be proud of and to be protected. A Green vote is the best way to achieve this. We are the alternative. We are not a party of politicians and pundits, but we are a party of the people. We are not a party of Westminster or Hollywood elite. A Green vote is the first step on the journey towards people power politics, and together we will achieve that. Make your voice heard, vote Green, thank you.
Okay, and now on to the leader of the Classical Liberals, Dunks11.
Thank you. So what we have seen in this debate tonight is that we are the only party that will stand up for social tolerance and fiscal responsibility and freedom. We have the Tories backstepping on their word not to work with the racist NUP. We have the Greens promoting indoctrination in schools and promoting the threat of another independence referendum. We have the SRP who have such a strong contempt for the people that they didn't even bother to show up tonight. This shows that only the Classical Liberals are a viable party who will stand up for you and your interests in the United Kingdom. Thank you, and I hope that you chose to vote Classical Liberal on the 6th of July.
Okay, and now on to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Demon4372.
The Liberal Democrats will soon publish a detailed manifesto that will set out all of the issues that we care about deeply. It will include many of the issues that I've discussed here tonight, and we will have a clear set of policies on the issues that are already devolved to Holyrood, as well as the ones that we want devolved to Holyrood. We will not get dug down in a damaging sectarian debate. Scotland needs to reject the divisive and increasingly sectarian rhetoric from both Unionists on the right and Nationalists on the left. The Liberal Democrats believe in the importance of powers being exercised as close to the people as possible. A vote for the Scottish Liberal Democrats is a vote for a unique Liberal vision for Scotland.
Okay, and lastly, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, Leachy62.
Scotland's a special place. It's where I was born, where I grew up, and where I've lived all my life. It's a country of haggis and kilts and iron brew. It's like nowhere else in the world. But with people drowning in high taxes, businesses strangled by ever-increasing red tape, and our students worse off than their counterparts south of the border, Scotland is undoubtedly falling behind. We can do so much better. And throughout the debate tonight, I hope that you've heard how we, the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party, plan to help Scotland to do truly so much better. So if you've heard something you've liked, whether that's more funding for our NHS, no increase of taxes, cutting back on our red tape, or just ensuring our students are given a proper education, then take the opportunity to change Scotland's destiny on the 6th of July. Vote Scottish Conservative and Unionist. Thank you.
Okay, and that concludes our debate. Thank you all. From this panel and Pacific Key, good night.